Because every other promoter out here is a scumbag. That's why. You know, we've got Frank Warren behind me, been lying and cheating his way through boxing for the last couple decades.
As regarding what he's just said, just so you know, I'm going to keep it short and sweet, he's going to get sued again for the comments that he's made publicly.
Frank, let me ask you, those comments were, he said you've been lying and cheating your way through boxing.
Are you not listening to what I just said? And if you carry on, you'll get it as well.
Wow, so Chris Eubank Jr., scathing attack against Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn, and Calais Sauerland, his previous promoter. And I really was not expecting that. Okay, so we haven't seen Chris Eubank Jr. in action for a while. He's been out the ring for about a year after that good performance against Liam Smith. And he's got a new promoter in place now, Ben Shalom. And he hasn't really seen Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn in a while. And he really just took this opportunity to just go in on him. And he really just went in on both of them. And I was surprised to see it. I really was. And I was actually a little bit disappointed that I think there was some issue with the audio that Frank Warren couldn't really hear him. Because if Frank Warren heard everything that he was saying, that really would have been a shouting match between the two of them. And I knew Frank would not like those comments. Now, let's break down the situation between Chris Eubank Jr. and his issue with these promoters. So Frank Warren and Chris Eubank Jr., it's a little bit deeper. It's a little bit of a deeper feud between them, because I think Frank Warren's issue was originally with Chris's dad.
It's wrong, and you know it's wrong, and it's just another demonstration of you being awkward for no reason. It's crazy stuff. Why would you even think about that?
Think about what? Having him come down to Brighton?
Yeah. Why would you even? Why? Not just him. What about the press?
Everything is possible.
What about the press?
Everything is possible.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we're going to wrap this up because I'm going to have to go and get some more anodine.
Chris Eubank Jr. was in the middle of that. Frank Warren didn't like the dad, so there's no love lost between those two. And then as well, Chris Eubank Jr. And actually Frank Warren worked together previously. They worked together for the Billy Joe Saunders fight. And Billy Joe Saunders was Frank Warren's one of his main fighters at that time. And obviously, Billy Joe Saunders beat Chris Eubank Jr. So that relationship, there was no love lost there. Obviously, Chris mentioned the fact that Frank sued him previously. And Frank got on TalkSport today and said that he won that settlement. And he was happy with it. He also mentioned the fact that he will be suing Chris Eubank Jr. In the near future about his comments. And if you know anything about Frank, he does not hesitate when it comes to these lawsuits. So that was a good one. As for Eddie Hearn, another promoter that Chris Eubank Jr. used to work with, what was happening was basically Anthony Joshua was fighting in the main events. Chris Eubank Jr. was co-main or also on the show. And everything was going fine until really the Golovkin situation. So what happened with the Golovkin situation, I have to be honest, I don't think Chris Eubank Jr. or his father wanted that fight. I don't think they wanted that fight. I think there was a lot of posturing, and I think Golovkin at that time would have knocked out Chris Eubank Jr. It would have been an exciting fight, but Chrissy was not ready for Golovkin at that time. So what happened? Instead, Eddie Hearn gave the fight to Kell Brook. Kell Brook took the fight, and Golovkin knocked him out. And that probably was the most damaging loss of Kell Brook's career. It really changed everything. So there was no love lost there. And I actually was on Eddie Hearn's side on that one because, like I said, I don't think Chris Eubank Jr. or his father wanted that Golovkin fight at that time. Golovkin was a lot closer to his prime, and he was really destructive at that time. So I don't think Chris wanted that fight. And that was the start of it. And then obviously the Conor Benn situation. Now here is where I am on Chris Eubank Jr.'s side. Now Chris Eubank Jr. was supposed to fight Conor Benn. Conor Benn failed 2 drugs tests months prior to that fight. Eddie Hearn knew this, and they all knew that, all the promoters and everyone knew this. And it wasn't until fight week until the journalist broke the story. So the journalist broke the story basically due to the backlash from the fans and journalists in general. They called the fight off. And there's been a lot of back and forth between Eddie Hearn and Chris Eubank Jr. So once again, there's no love lost there. And on that time, like I said, I was actually on Chris Eubank Jr.'s side because I think that's ridiculous. Your fighter, Conor Benn, has failed 2 drugs tests and you're going to let him fight Chris. I mean, you obviously don't care about Chris Eubank Jr.'s health. And whatever Eddie Hearn says, he was just talking a lot of nonsense, really. Basically saying that, he couldn't pull the fight, he couldn't do this, the fight had to happen. But when Dillian White failed a drugs test and he was fighting Anthony Joshua, Eddie Hearn's, cash cow, Eddie Hearn called that fight immediately and called it off and put in a replacement opponent. So, look, I was on Chris Eubank Jr.'s side on that one. Eddie Hearn, I think he's shown who he really is. So yeah, very interesting. The press conference in London for the big one, Beterbiev and Bivol. I will be making a lot of videos in the build-up to that fight because I also can't wait for it. About 2.5 weeks away. So yeah, we'll gear up towards that one. But yeah, today just wanted to discuss the comments made at the press conference by Chris Eubank Jr. against Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, and his previous promoter, Kalle Sauerland.